Welcome back to Bastard Sword. I'm Drew.
Hey, I'm Josh.
Thanks for joining us. We're back this week. Some things. We're going to talk about a game that I have been pestering Josh to play for a very long time, and he finally got through it. So I'm kind of excited to try and remember what I know about that game. We're going to be talking about Blasphemous.
Yeah, it took me a minute to finally sit down and get good. You know, I had to get good to really play through it. Bounced off it a couple times, and you know, I'm in between different games right now. So yeah, I'm glad I finished it. It was worth it. We'll get to talking about it here in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that. It can be a little bit of an impenetrable game, like kind of a rough game to get into, but I think it's really cool once you do, which we'll get back to that here in just a second. I figure we'll spend a little bit and talk about a couple of the things that have been going on. First off, I've just been playing a couple random games I just wanted to mention for a few minutes. Josh, what have you been playing lately?
I'm back on Liza P. I'm in New Game Plus, running Liza P with some of the new stuff that they've added, a couple little weapons and accessories. But yeah, mainly just experiencing the game again because I kind of forgot what happened in it. But it's got like a certain pace to it, kind of somewhere between like Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne. So it's like riding a bike, you know, you got to get into the flow of it. Same with Blasphemous. It also has its own sort of pace. But,
yeah, definitely.
I've been trying to slam as many hours as I can into Metaphor. We talked a little bit about that last episode. I just got to like what I'm guessing is like the halfway point of the story, probably like 50-ish hours. And yeah, it's like twisty as fuck. It's kind of got like, it's Shakespearean in a lot of ways. It's just somebody stabbed someone and then it turns out they didn't die, but then someone else died. It's like that all the fucking time. And I'm all about it. It's dramatic but like well written at the same time. So
God,
yeah,
I'm so excited to try that. But I will say the sentence, yeah, I think I'm at the halfway point. I'm at about 50 hours is just fucking terrifying to me.
It is. I mean, like the dungeon running and like the, you know, RPG elements of it like are always fun. But they're kind of filtered through these long story segments. And I will admit, like, there's been a few times where I'm like, oh, fuck, let's get on with it. But I'm afraid to skip important things. But like as soon as I start to like lose attention for it, the story like brings in something new and like just something that puts a whole spin on what's going on, the plot itself. I don't want to spoil anything because it's kind of incredible, and I still don't have all the answers. And it's like, so the Persona games are kind of that way too. They like slow drip information to you until it like the actual like entire plot like comes together at the very end. So
I always love that when a game can actually like build up that sense of mystery and have that moment where everything kind of clicks into place at the end. And it's really impressive, even if as terrifying as it is to me for to be that long, but like to continually build that sense of mystery and kind of like keep it engaging that long into the game is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and it has like so many moving parts because it's like, you know, there's side stuff and your characters are traveling, like each chapter you go to a new city. So it's just like adding all these things, and then you can revisit any of the old cities and interact with like your followers and all. It just keeps adding shit. And yeah, like the story will drop like a little bit of information and make you go, man, what the fuck do you mean by that? Like, what's that? And then like it won't really dive into it till like later. It's cool because I feel smart when I'm like, hey, what, that was weird dialogue. And then they're like, actually, that dialogue was really important. I'm like, yeah, I paid attention enough. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Congratulations,
all making sense.
me.
Yeah. Well, I have problems with my attention span.
Same.
And sometimes like extensive dialogue, especially in like speech bubbles, although it is like, you know, there's voice acting, but sometimes I'm just like, like checking out.
Yeah, even with Blasphemous that we'll talk about later, a lot of the times in the dialogue with that, I'm just like, I don't understand what you're talking about here. Can we just, there's a lot happening. Can we just move
In the
along?
light of the holy miracle on this blessed day, thou shalt experience. And you're like, can we fight? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you on? What are you gaming?
I got the remaster of Horizon Zero Dawn. I think I talked about how I just got a PS5 recently and they just released that. I was like, sure, why not? I played a little bit of Zero Dawn when I got a PS4 several years ago, and it was fine. And I've been playing the remaster a little, and it's fine. I don't know. Yeah,
you bought it new? You bought the remaster new?
No, I just got the upgrade. It was like $10.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
I wasn't trying to spend $70 on that. God, no, or
Got
whatever
you.
they're asking. No, yeah, I figured for $10, why not? Because I kind of wanted to go back and get into that game again, but it's just, I don't know. Like, it feels like at a lot of times it gets really close to being really good, but it's also just kind of all right.
It's
Yeah,
one of those series I keep trying to get into. I've played both games, and every time I probably put like 20 hours in, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's not even like I have strong feelings about it, but again, attention span issues, like I just kind of bounced off of it for whatever reason.
parts of it are really good. Like when it is at its best, it's genuinely like really, really great. Fighting and like kind of stalking and hunting the giant, more tough, like robot dinosaur things is really fun and satisfying. And they give you a bunch of different tools, and like there's a pretty good variety of them with all kinds of different weaknesses, and you can kind of find your own ways to approach the different fights and everything. And all of that feels really good. Like it's kind of frantic but strategic. It's fun. It almost reminds me of like sort of a Monster Hunter type of vibe, but like in a game with an actual, story and like campaign progression and stuff, which is kind of what I've always wanted from Monster Hunter, but just isn't really the type of game that it is. So when I get to do that stuff, it's cool. I dig it. When it's just doing the kind of typical Ubisoft open world checklist stuff, it's okay. Like it's really pretty. It feels good enough to move around. Combat with humans, like taking out bandit bases and stuff, is really kind of bland. It doesn't get to the point that it's like bad. It's just not very interesting. And I don't know, like exploration and everything looks great, but it's just kind of all right. Like it never really passes that threshold into being great, except for these very specific moments that just don't seem to pop up as often as I would like. So
right.
I don't know how much I'm going to stick with it, but it's all right. It looks pretty.
You're playing on just a base PS5, right? You didn't get like the PS5 Pro or anything like that.
No, I put in an application to refinance my house and buy it, but my credit was too bad, so
They said no.
Well,
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily worth it. I've seen a lot of people talking about the PS5 Pro graphical fidelity and if that's worth anything to you,
right,
but I don't think it is to me. But I figured that would be one of the games that they would push for that, because it does look very good. Like I'm kind of surprised with how crisp it looks, at least from what I've seen of the remaster.
Yeah, and even like poking around on the quality mode as opposed to performance. Like I'm playing it on performance mode because I'm not a fucking weirdo, but the quality mode looks great. Like I mean, there is a noticeable difference. I feel like in a lot of games on the newer consoles, like the difference between quality and performance is noticeable but not that significant, and it seems pretty significant here. I'm not like sitting there doing a full Digital Foundry analysis, but just in terms of like the lighting effects and the particles and like the way the sun is like filtering through the snow and everything, it just, you can notice a pretty substantial difference between the two, and it looks kind of incredible on the quality mode. It still looks really good on performance, but yeah, I could see that being an appeal, if you're the type to if that type of currency spends well for you, like a little better than it does for me.
Right. Yeah. I usually ignore the the existence of quality mode, like
Right.
as soon as I start any game. And that was really rough with Final Fantasy 16 because I think performance mode was kind of broken when it came out. So it's still like, or it was like uncapped or something weird was going on, and it would start to chug really bad. And for a more action oriented game, that really sucked in spots, but it was mainly in like the open world. But yeah, would you say it's the best looking game right now? Where would you put that?
I don't know. I mean, it looks really good, but also like I just finished up the Silent Hill 2 remake, and obviously completely different scope of game and everything, but that looked incredible. And I actually did play that on quality mode, which I talked about the reasons for that, I think, last week some, but like comparing which one looks better, I don't know. They both look really impressive.
I'm like, you're like a visuals guy, and you're like, I'm just looking at shit. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm just staring at the things. I'm like, this is pretty, and this is also pretty, but like, yeah, whatever.
It all looks cool, but yeah, it doesn't need to come out of the screen. But it is nice to see like they're stepping up that level of graphic fidelity for Sony.
And that also makes me excited about Death Stranding 2, because I actually didn't realize that Death Stranding ran on the same engine as Horizon.
Right.
Yeah, but seeing what they're doing with this newest version of it, I'm assuming Death Stranding 2 is running on the same engine. That is going to... I'm real excited to see what kind of visuals Kojima pulls out of that.
Oh, yeah. And if you haven't played the remaster yet, you should check that one out as well, because it looks great on PS5.
Yeah, I've got it loaded up, actually. I just haven't opened it yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing I've been playing in the complete opposite direction is Case of the Golden Idol. Do you know anything about this? Have you even heard of it?
I've never heard of it. I have no idea what's going on.
All right, so this game fucking rules. A sequel just came out, actually, which kind of, gave me the push to try this, which had sort of been on my radar for a while. So this is I'm playing it on console, but it seems like a really PC, native type of game. It's a point and click detective game, I guess, investigation game. I don't really know how to describe this. I'm going to try. This might be a little rough, so just bear with me. I'm fucking winging it here.
I'm getting the visuals as you start this. I'm looking at the visuals.
So
for this
visuals,
game.
Yeah, it's a very like 90s LucasArts point and click adventure game type of vibe. It has like the heavy dithering on the sort of 3D type of elements, and it's this really like 90s very like stylized pixel art. When I say pixel art, not like a Super Nintendo side scroller or anything, but these like kind of tall, detailed pixels. I'm probably doing a bad job of describing that, but picture like a Monkey Island or something. And you come across, so you play the game by like clicking around these different crime scenes. They start out on a single screen. They eventually get more elaborate. You're traveling through like different screens, and it's kind of like a real-time snapshot of this crime scene and like the people that are around it. And there's a certain number of objects that you can interact with. Like they'll be highlighted, so you're not like just blindly clicking on everything in the screen. It's not really that type of game, but like each element on the screen will give you a certain amount of information, and as you analyze these things, it has these different like keywords that will jump out at you, and they'll fill in your like clue book. And you so you start out by like scraping the crime scene and building a vocabulary of all these different elements that could potentially be in play. And then as you discover all these things, you have a few bonus objectives where you can go through and figure out the name of every person that's involved there, or you can figure out the details of these different elements that are there. So like, for example, in one of the scenes, I'm going to try not to spoil this because I think it's a very cool game and you should play it. But so the setup is that you are at this estate, and there is someone who is just on fire out in the yard, and there are a bunch of people gathered around, and so you can like click on the different people, see what they have in their inventory, see what their reactions are to what's going on, and then you can go inside and you find out that it is a last will and testament reading from where someone in that family had been killed recently, and you find like scraps of the will on the floor that have been shredded up because someone was mad. And so you can see, what items were assigned, but you cannot see who they were assigned to. And you also get like different clues of names of people that might have been present at that time, but you're not told like which of the people are who. Like you don't know what name goes with what person, and you have to examine like all of these different things. You can see like letters that people have on their person, and you can just see like their reaction, how they feel about what's happening around them, to eventually piece together like what actually happened, the name of the person who was killed, who ordered them to be killed, like who received what in the will, and like exactly how this situation played out. And you do that by like, using the building blocks of these different like clues that you've got at the crime scene. And it's so creative and difficult to describe, but like it feels like an actual investigation. Like you feel like you talked about metaphor making you feel smart for picking up on this certain thing that was a little bit off. This game is just like all that. It's like picking up on all these details and trying to make yourself feel like the smartest little boy. And it's so cool and creative and satisfying, and I kind of love it.
What is the I can't think of what the game is called, where you like fill in the words to make the sentences like based on puns and stuff like that.
I don't, just like some kind of Mad Libs thing. I'm not sure.
Mad Libs, yeah. It has a Mad Libs sort of like layout to the description of events, and you like fill that in with the different details that you have. Is that what I'm getting from that?
Yes. Yeah. And you have to, find all the details. You can only fill it in with the details that you have. And it seems like it's escalating in a lot of really, cool and creative ways. And it's not like, I was worried when I started and kind of saw what I was getting into, that it was going to be just kind of too much, like a little too difficult, but it has a lot of tools to kind of help nudge you in the right direction. And like once you start filling things in, it won't just tell you when you have everything right, but it will tell you when you're moving in the right direction. Like there's a threshold where it'll tell you that like 2 or fewer of the boxes that you have filled in are wrong, and then you kind of know to poke away from there. Like there was one where I was certain of the series of events that had happened, but I had the wrong person pegged as the murderer, and I was like pulling my hair out going back and restudying everything, and then I finally had a moment where everything clicked. I was like, oh, that guy did it. And tried to make it look like this other person. I get it.
They got you.
They got me. But yeah, really, really cool, really unique. I love that shit.
Yeah, it seems very interesting, very kind of retro with like a new school twist on just and like how artistic these scenes are. They look very interesting and kind of endearing once you get like the look of it. It kind of has like a Monty Python vibe to it.
Yeah, I can see that. Like that. Yeah, that's what I say. It's like it's hard to describe the art style for me because I have baby brain and know like I failed art history I passed art history with a D. I failed art appreciation. I do not appreciate art enough, and I do not have the vocabulary to describe it, apparently.
Damn. Well, it seems like a pretty cool game, and it's like they've got a bunch of episodes for it. It looks like there's like at least 3 or 4 add-ons right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure how deep it goes. Like I said, I'm still pretty early on. But yeah, it's unique. Like I haven't really played many other games that give you that sense of, sense of pride and accomplishment. No, let you do that type of problem solving in that way. Like, do actual investigation. I guess the main other one I could think of is like Return of the Obra Dinn, which was also a banger of a game.
That is another one I keep passing over. I've looked at it several times, thought it looked cool, but just wasn't sure, you know?
Man, I love me some Obra Dinn. But yeah, anyway, that was my little screed on Case of the Golden Idol. You should check it out. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's neat.
Yeah, it seems neat. And it's got overwhelmingly positive reviews. 6,000 reviews saying it sounds pretty good. So
yeah,
might be worth it.
It is good and neat. Another thing that's good and neat, actually, I don't know if it's really good or neat, but the Game Awards just announced their nominees just earlier today, as of the time we're recording, for, well, all the different categories. But of course, the main thing people care about is Game of the Year. I figured we could just talk about these a little bit. It's kind of like, I don't know how much I care about Game of the Year awards. I
like, yeah, you started that intro and it sounded like you were having a moral dilemma about the Game Awards. You were like, are they good? Is it worth it?
Is it? I don't know the answer to that. Are they good? Is it worth it? It's an open question.
Listeners, you may decide.
You may decide.
We're going to talk about it.
We are, yeah, just because it's gaming things. And also, they apparently adjusted their rules or something or whatever. They nominated Shadow of the Erdtree. So, hell yeah, it's Erdtree time, boys.
We were all gambling on that one. And I saw a tweet from, I think it was Ratatosker. He said he really hoped that they nominated a DLC because everyone's going to be fucking pissed about it. And I agree with that sentiment, and I think that's hilarious and awesome. And
yes,
and I don't care if people are mad, but I am pro Shadow of the Erdtree, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
Yes. So their Game of the Year nominees were Astrobot, which cool. It seems to be cleaning up. It's got a lot of awards. I haven't played it. I would like to play that. Balatro, which was kind of interesting to see getting an actual Game of the Year award. Do you know, like, are you familiar? Are you Balatro pilled?
I'm not Balatro pilled. I am not down with the poker roguelike life. Or, as I said earlier, gambling on top of gambling. So,
I mean, that's basically just Vampire Survivors, though.
Yes.
I'm all about. I'm curious about Balatro. Like, I missed the Balatro bandwagon and everyone fucking loves it. And I stare at it and I'm like, I don't know. It's like, I don't care about poker. I don't care about roguelikes. Why? But apparently it's very good and I'm just a weirdo. So I don't know. I'm open to checking it out. It's a very odd game to see getting a proper like Game of the Year nomination. So that's cool at least.
Yeah. I mean, it's a card game. It's been a while since we've seen a card game get a Game of the Year nomination. I mean, it must be like Solitaire on fucking steroids if it's doing that well. But maybe one day I'll break. But you know, I don't think I'm going to jump to it anytime soon.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the podcasts I listen to, I don't really listen to a lot of stuff, but like one of the gaming podcasts I listen to just did an episode on Balatro and they fucking love that shit. And generally I'm on board with them. So that makes me kind of curious to check it out at least.
I mean, I'm sure it's good and addictive and does something, obviously a lot of things right. So, you know, it is what it is there.
It is. Yeah. Also, Black Myth Wukong, which, I think people kind of expected that to get a nod. I still haven't checked that out. It seems kind of, seems all right. I'll play it eventually. Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I don't know that I'm necessarily surprised to see it, but it seemed like that kind of lost a little bit of steam. Didn't really seem to have the long tail in terms of discussion on games media places that I follow. But it's also Final Fantasy VII, so then Metaphor got a nod for Game of the Year. So cool, neat.
Two really, really dense, pretty good RPGs, and then Shadow of the Erd, two Souls likes, a card game, and a Mario killer, like a Mario platformer, Mario Destroyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's no Nintendo on here either. Just kind of wild.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I kind of bummed no Silent Hill 2, but it's whatever. It got some nominations elsewhere, but yeah, Astrobot just had nomination after nomination through all the categories. Animal Well got a couple of nominations, like best, I think, debut game, best indie game, something like that, which is pretty cool. Yeah, good for Animal Well. I thought it was kind of interesting that Star Wars Outlaws got nominated for best action adventure game, which... Ooh. Yeah, just seems completely counter to what I feel like a fucking douchebag chud when I say counter to what the narrative is on that game. Yeah. But also, yeah, kind of counter to what the narrative is on that game.
They paid for that shit.
They paid for the shit.
No, I mean, what other, there's got to be a better action adventure game. That I mean, like, so the nominees, I didn't see the full list.
Yeah, Astrobot, which will win, no question. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Silent Hill 2. I would not really consider an action adventure game, but
okay,
and Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that one's fair. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have any comments on it besides.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Which really, that's my reaction to 99% of this stuff. Like, it just, I don't know. I think it's interesting enough. I'll skim through some Game of the Year lists. Like, I'm not above that, but also, like, I don't know. Do I care? Not really.
I mean, it's definitely a good place to see which games are good, if you're unsure of where to go next and they're just name dropping all these titles. I mean, it's not a bad place to find some direction, at least.
Yeah, and I guess there's that little bit of I don't even know that you could call it like underdog cheering, because I don't think you could consider Shadow of the Erdtree an underdog, but also hell yeah, go FromSoft.
It's right next to Dragon's Dogma 2, so
yeah, it is.
It's gotta sting a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. So we have best sports and racing game category is like one of the bleakest things I have ever seen in my life. Nominees are F124, which is probably fine. The new EA Sports, not FIFA, NBA 2K25, Topspin 2K25, and WWE 2K24.
Damn.
So, like, the newer WWE games seem like a complete dumpster fire. The newer NBA games seem like just the most, like, money grabby, just like bullshit microtransaction cash store shit that, like, I've ever seen. So, that's... Yeah.
There's no FIFA on this list. I haven't kept up with FIFA games. I don't know. No one burned me at the stake for dissing FIFA.
I'm gonna I'm gonna educate you here. I read Eurogamer occasionally, so I am up to date on this shit. EA Sports FC25. What do you think the FC stands for? Give you a hint. It's
FIFA Corporation.
Football Club. They no longer have the FIFA license, but that's the new FIFA. Yeah, it's whatever. Anyway,
I'm American. I don't care much about soccer, and I don't care much about EA Sports. So those combinations of it's just I'm never even gonna look into that. I have heard some of the FIFA controversy, but. Thank you.
I'm good. Yeah, it just kind of the fact that like the newer NBA 2K games showed up on a like best of list, and the new WWE game, which I'm not really a sports person, but like I have caught enough context about those games in passing that it's like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
This is the state of things.
You know what I would do if I were EA? I'd stop being a bitch and I would put Burnout Revenge Remake on this list.
I thought you said you'd stop being a bitch, but you need Burnout 3 Remake. Burnout 3.
Burnout 3 is good. Burnout Revenge and Burnout Takedown. Those are the pinnacles. Those are your Rushmore of. I don't. Yeah, the 2 or 3. I don't remember.
2 was Takedown. 3. Or was 3 Takedown? Burnout 3 was Takedown. 2 was something else. I don't know. Whatever. Burnout 3 fucking ruled, and it had an amazing soundtrack.
A good Burnout game is what the people crave.
That's what they crave. So make it so.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, that's probably enough on the game awards. I put them on the outline. I was like, yeah, this stuff's happening. We should probably talk about it. And then we started talking about it. I was like, I don't fucking care about any of this. Why are we talking about this? What have I done?
Here, I got a few call outs. Best multiplayer game, Helldivers 2. Fuck yeah. And Warhammer Space Marine 2 is on there. Which I know it has a pretty good online section, but I didn't think it would make best multiplayer for that. Maybe it's just that we've talked about this, like how games used to have the campaign and then the multiplayer section that was just a fun journey into the...
Yeah, just kind of like a fun add-on.
The mechanics of the game. Yeah, exactly. So most anticipated game, we've got Death Stranding 2. And Grand Theft Auto 6, of course, Metroid Prime 4, and Monster Hunter Wilds, which I was going to say that one is probably going to be closer to being like a Horizon Zero Dawn killer with, if it's more open, more fleshed out. I didn't get to play the beta, so I can't speak on that, but it looks to be pretty good. I'm hoping it is.
Yeah, I just want a Monster Hunter game that I can actually like finish and that isn't just about the grind.
I'm thinking that this one will be more about the journey and the traveling and the resource management and stuff like that. I'm hoping. I don't know. It could. They like the grind in those games, so they might keep it. But
yeah, that's kind of the game, and I get it. It's just
a fresh spin on that. I mean, I think that's their goal, right? To bring in like new players and people who might have like kind of passed on World might come around to this. I'm hoping I'm one of those people because I think it looks cool. So
exactly. I do think it looks cool. I just wish they would stop making it for the people that like it and start making it for me.
Make it for the Souls fans.
Exactly.
Make a spinoff for the Souls fans, at least. Come on. Someone's mad about us saying that.
Good. I hope I get yelled at. You know what else is made for the Souls fans?
A little game called Blasphemous.
So Blasphemous kind of rules. I mean, we got it. It kind of rules. I think that's probably a good qualifier. There's a lot of good things. There's some, I don't know. It's not quite like an all-timer for me, but it's a very good game. So yeah, let's talk about Blasphemous a little. Blasphemous released September 10th, 2019, developed by a Spanish studio called The Game Kitchen. So this game, if you are not familiar, it's a 2D pixel art, kind of Souls-like, Metroidvania type of game, based all around Catholicism. This is a Catholic-ass game.
And I am an ex-Catholic ass Souls-like enjoyer and Metroidvania enjoyer. So it's perfect. It was made for me.
It's like, what if we made a game just for Josh? And it's funny. Yeah. We'll come back around to the aesthetics a bit. But I have no real context for a lot of that. Like I have nothing to do with Catholicism. I was never really like I know some Catholics, but I've never been like immersed in that. I just have caught, I guess, cultural osmosis of Catholicism. So a lot of this stuff is probably not as impactful for me beyond just being like, damn, that looks fucking cool as it could have been otherwise.
Given where we live, like, I don't think there's a strong concentration of Catholics in our area, but there are a few churches.
Right.
Anytime you talk to anyone who's like Methodist or like the outer religions of Christianity, like they're always shocked by like Catholicism. Like they're always like, they have like weird ideas about what it is. And this is like what or like non-Catholics think Catholicism is. Like just weird, fucked up imagery and blood and women and
right,
and like kind of like occult, almost like occult mysticism stuff to people who don't understand that it's like sort of the groundwork.
Oh, so this is not okay. I was about to turn Catholic actually, but
it's I mean, like you approach it from the right angle, you might be onto something. But yeah, it's dark, man. Like and it leans into like a lot of the like historical sainthood, like super devout monks and like what do they call, like hermits that like got really into one thing about like the Holy Spirit or whatever it is, like one aspect of Catholicism, like the Virgin Mary, and then they would like do unconventional weird things and probably like start hallucinating because like they wouldn't eat, or they would like sit in a chair all day and stare at a tree, like literal Dark Souls shit.
Right.
So like we have a lot of that, like stigmata as a miracle and a blessing, and like these weird ailments that are like, no, this is a sign from God, and this like takes that to 1000. Like it just goes all in on like people with bleeding eyes and like self-flagellation.
There is so much of that.
Yeah, like
yeah,
people being nailed to trees or becoming trees, and just like I think the one that's like a friar, and he's like a giant man baby, but he has like an old man growing out of his face or at his chest. And it's like it's all pixel art and like really fucking weird looking. And yeah, it's like everything you encounter in this game is like, what the fuck is that? There's a boss that's like something about like the innocence, and it's a blind baby that's being carried around by like, I don't know, like fucking weird tentacles, like monster bug arms or some shit. I don't know. It's very like elaborate, and I got killed by that baby, man. And
right.
As an attack where it just like crushes you. So yeah, I don't know. What I wanted to do a thing here where we name all the games that we'll trade off. Where right. We name the games that this reminds us of, and you just name one, and then I'll name one, and then we'll explain a little bit more.
Kingsfield.
Shit, you caught me off guard with that one.
No notes, just Kingsfield.
Yeah, we're done. Classic Prince of Persia.
Very Prince of Persia, like the art style, the kind of heavy animation focus. Yeah, I get extreme Prince of Persia, and the kind of deliberate pace. Like classic Castlevania.
Yes, I would say even more. There are the later sections of the game really start to feel like Symphony of the Night. Let's see. I mean, kind of Metroid in a way. Like you're not on an alien planet, but everything does feel very alien and kind of weird. And I don't know, like it is essentially like old cathedrals and castles and mountains, but all the things that populate those areas don't look right.
Yeah, it's like, what if Metroid, but instead of like an alien planet, you accidentally landed in fucked up Spain?
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely true. You get one more.
Oh, I get one more. I mean, definitely Souls, but like, yeah, it's got some pretty heavy Dark Souls DNA, but not in a way that feels like direct, I guess, if that makes sense. It seems to have a pretty similar philosophy, and this gets lumped in as a Souls-like a lot, and I get it, but it also isn't that similar, and it's really not that direct, like a Salt and Sanctuary or Salt and Sacrifice or whatever, or like a Death's Gambit or something like that. It's not even as Souls-like as a Hollow Knight or something, but it also, I could make an argument for some pretty soulsy things in it too.
Yeah, it's weird. It kind of walks that line because you don't necessarily like drop your points. You drop part of your like skill meter And if you don't recover that, then you obviously like lose some ability function, like as you try to explore and progress the game. But yeah, I don't know if it's more of like a vibe presentation with like the NPCs and the lore being sort of like in your face, but also cryptic as fuck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting, but you don't have a level up system. Another game I forgot to mention I was playing was The Last Faith, which is sort of like this game, but it's ripping off Bloodborne pretty heavily. So it does have like the point system and all that stuff. You go to a doll and like level up basically. So yeah, this game doesn't have any of that. And it also doesn't have fast travel. I mean, it has fast travel points more like Castlevania, where it just takes you to like sections on the map.
Yeah, it's like the Symphony of the Night there, or well, I guess all those Castlevanias. But yeah, it has like the fast travel rooms, but only to certain places. And you also, it's kind of, I haven't played. I mean, we did the little bit about, talking about all the games it reminds us of, but at the same time, Blasphemous feels really unique to me, and just the specific combination of elements like doesn't really feel like any other game specifically. Like the most obvious reference point is some kind of a Metroidvania, but also you don't really gain new abilities. Like you get some new combat abilities, but you don't get any new traversal abilities or anything that are gonna like unlock new ways to go or anything like that. It's pretty open, and you can go most places right from the beginning, assuming you can actually make it there. But it's just like a weirdly kind of slow paced, methodical and fucking brutal type of game that really just kind of like stands out as its own sort of thing in a way that's a little bit hard to describe, actually.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, its uniqueness is definitely there, and it has this sort of appeal that's off-putting at first, and then you get that, like I said, it sort of has that Dark Souls 1 flow where if you don't play at its pace and you don't manage like the enemies that are coming at you, then like you're obviously going to have a bad time. And there's also lots of trap rooms that are thrown in, mixed in with the enemies and combat. But getting that like parry dash down was like when the flow really like started to like lock in for me, and I could like clear rooms without like having unnecessary problems or like losing a bunch of health. So yeah, it works really well in that regard, honestly.
Yeah.
I said this to you as I was like getting toward like the back half of the game, but it starts to bring some like Mega Man energy.
I was just sitting there thinking, man, should I interrupt him and just scream Mega Man?
Yeah, no, it really Mega does. Man. Like, because you get to these levels where it's just like they're throwing enemies at you, and then like the boss setups are kind of like feel like Mega Man X or Mega Man Zero, where you're like just locked in a room and you have to dodge and attack when you can, and like I don't know, it felt like Mega Man, it felt like Souls game at the same time, but a few of those bosses really fucking kicked my ass too.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because we were messaging back and forth as you were playing through this, and you're sending me like, man, this boss is just being an absolute fucking bastard. And I'm like, come on, it wasn't that bad. Because I played this a while ago, so a lot of the kind of rough edges have been sanded off in my mind, and I just remember the high points. But I started playing through it again just to refresh myself a little and get a little bit of context before we talked about it. And I was like, oh shit, he was right. This is actually pretty brutal. This is kind of rough.
Well, I mean, the stage setup, once you kind of like get the flow of it, because it feels like the areas are really big and like never ending. And then you go through one, it's like one checkpoint, and then there's a checkpoint before the boss usually. And then you find some like map interconnectedness, like elevators or shortcuts. But yeah, like once I figured out that flow, like of like pacing myself and knowing like I had a checkpoint before a boss, It really like seemed to compress everything for me. And like as I was doing that, I really felt like I started to bounce off the most in the like traversal of those areas. Like I would go through like a couple rooms, they'd introduce some new enemies, I'd have a bad fucking time, I'd die to a trap. And then I'd be like, you know what? I need to take a break. And like the bosses were the ones that I was like, okay, I can keep going. I can do this for like 20 tries until I get it.
Yeah. I think the platforming in this is probably like the weakest part of the game and what sort of keeps it out of being an all-timer for me, both in terms of just the mechanics of it. Like it's a pretty slow game. You've got like I don't think it's quite like a classic Castlevania jump because you have some control in the air, but like you're not a, super graceful person. You're not like super mobile. You have a pretty slow jump and it's okay, but it just doesn't feel super like precise and snappy as a platformer. And the design of a lot of the platforming sections is pretty brutal, actually.
Yeah.
Like especially as you like push off into some of the side content and some of the little like hidden collectibles, they have some really rough, like bordering on Kaizo type of platforming challenges that wouldn't be too hateful in a game with, I guess, slightly more forgiving platforming controls. And apparently it used to be like even more unforgiving. Like there was a pretty major update that I remember people were happy about, which was before I first played the game, that added a little bit of coyote time, that little bit of extra leeway, forgiveness as you're like going off an edge before you jump. Because I couldn't imagine trying to play this without that little handicap as well. And this game really, really likes to put the little like fuck you enemies in the most like inconvenient places while you're trying to do some platforming challenges too.
Oh god, yeah, and spikes are insta kill, so there's some cases where they intentionally like bounce you into spikes and just fuck up your whole run.
Yeah.
But the one that got me was there's a library area and there are enemies that chuck books at you, and every time you're like getting ready to jump to the next platform, they fucking throw that book and it knocks your character back. And god damn, that was so annoying. It didn't even like kill me. It just frustrated me that I had to climb up there so many times. And like, I mean, and I would say that too about this game is like when it frustrates you and you're able to overcome and like figure out the mechanics of what it wants you to do, then it's actually very satisfying.
Yeah, like there in certain situations, this is like one of, if not my like top favorite I guess side-scrolling action game, I suppose. But it just has other moments that kind of aren't quite there too. It's a weird game because like it is extremely good, but it also just has those moments of frustration. And like you were saying, when you get one of those kind of borderline cheap deaths or get knocked back to a checkpoint, it can feel pretty punitive too, because it isn't super generous with the checkpoint, and the kind of world layout is a little awkward. Like,
yeah.
One of the cool things, I'm not really a completionist in most games, but in Metroidvanias like this, I tend to be, because I always just enjoy being at the upper end of the power curve and just going back through all these areas and pushing at the corners of the map to fill in that 100%. This is one of the few that I never really did that in, because it never gets... I sound like a whiny baby saying this, but like it never gets easy. You can never like rush through it.
Right. Yeah. With how many trap rooms there are. And in some cases, like in the game, I was like, yeah, I'm not going back that way. Like I would use the wrap around the opposite direction just because I knew it was easier. It doesn't give you a lot of incentive if you're not trying to just, I guess, like achievement hunt and like, or get the secret ending or get everything 100%. Like, it's a lot of runaround or backtracking that's probably not worth the headache. And that's kind of how I felt like toward the end of my run. I thought about doing the other ending and like going back and trying to get things that I missed, but it seemed like a lot of work. So I kind of was like, yeah, I think I'm satisfied with completing the game as I did.
Yeah, it is. And it has a lot of that Dark Souls style obtuse quest design where there are these big secrets that require you to go through like a pretty convoluted series of events and like go collect things from different corners of the map and bring them back to certain places and interact with those people. And the places you need to like bring things to and the things you need to collect and the people you need to interact with, they're all scattered at just really awkward places on the map that aren't super near any of the fast travel points. They're not super near the checkpoints or anything. So you do a lot of that trudging. And again, since you don't really get any like mobility upgrades or anything, you're never really going faster than your standard pace. And it's through a lot of these not like, you know, incredibly insurmountable rooms, but things that are on the upper end of difficult, just enough to make it kind of painful to just go back through and scoop up all these little things and be completionist with it.
Or I think it's like the one that's below the central village. Like you still have to like climb up like a bunch of platforms while dodging like the acid drip. And like that will also knock you back. So if you're jumping and you fuck it up and you fall, you got to start over. And it's like, dude, I just need to go up to the guy to give him an item to get like a little bonus boost. Like you don't even really get like significant, you know, power boosts in this game. You just get enough to kind of like push into the next area.
Right.
Which there was an area, I think I don't know if it was DLC, if it was optional, but I skipped it. So I ended up going right for the final boss, and it was like the underground area with the ships.
Yeah, I think that might have been DLC, and I could be wrong in making someone angry, but I didn't play the newer DLC. So this game had, I think, 3 free expansion packs for it, which is kind of awesome. But they had one in 2020, and then 2 of them released in 2021. I don't remember exactly when I played it, but it was before the final DLC had come out, which added on like a secret true ending and a pretty substantial like new quest and new bosses and stuff. I want to go back through and do that. I haven't.
Yeah, I mean that would be like a guide run through, you know, like so you don't have to backtrack.
Yeah. And so we've kind of, I guess, been griping about our nitpicks with the game, which are, I think they're slightly more than nitpicks. Like they kind of keep it from being quite as amazing as it could be. But I want to talk about the things that are actually really good about this game, because I really, really like this game, and it is very good in a lot of ways. One, we talked about the aesthetics a little, but like it's worth mentioning, this is probably like, it feels weird to say the prettiest or most beautiful, but it really is some of the just best and most well done and most striking pixel art I have ever seen in a game.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's even the intro, the opening menu of the game has some great like different skins that you can throw on there for the different characters, and they're all like really elaborate pixel art backgrounds with the character's face, and they're like breathing and moving. It's good stuff.
It is incredible, and it's all based on this like Renaissance painting style, and it has that kind of painterly feel to it, just with the like beautiful kind of muted-ish color schemes to everything. And it's so like hyper detailed and elaborate and like incredibly beautifully animated. All the bosses are these just like huge kind of disgusting monstrosities that are like this masterpiece of sprite design. The animations, like the cutscenes, are all pixel art sprites as well, that again are just incredibly like super just detailed and like compositionally amazing. Like there's a level of artistry to all of the designs here that you really just don't normally get in these type of games. And that's not like a knock on other, game designs like pixel art or anything. I freaking love a bunch of pixel art designs, but like this is just done at such a higher level than really anything I can think of. Like it's so impressive. Like it is always just an absolute joy to just look at everything on the screen that's happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They the levels, the backgrounds, especially like later in the game where it's like you're at an elevated position and you can see like all these vistas. There's like distant cities and ruins. In the mountains, there's like the giant statues of like women's faces crying blood and stuff like that. Like every little detail in each new area is like exciting and like you said, gorgeous. And yeah, like you don't really see, especially in like smaller indie games, like it should be said, like this game isn't super long. It probably lengthwise like pales compared to like Hollow Knight. But it does a lot. Yeah, it does a lot with its runtime and it shows you a lot of really cool things.
Yeah, it does. And the combat is also like it's great. It feels really like well tuned. The pace of it works about perfectly for me. It hits that like early Dark Souls spot of not being like overwhelmingly fast paced and twitchy, but it's still, you have to pay attention. Like there's some pretty fast and pretty difficult encounters, but it just has a really nice and satisfying flow to it. It's also helped by the fact that your moveset isn't like huge, but again, I'm a parody of myself and just throwing out Dark Souls, but it's such a just tight and well-tuned moveset. Like this is built pretty heavily around parrying, which the timing of it is generous enough that it never feels like it never feels like unfair or anything. And it's so satisfying to get right. Like there is definitely a skill to it. It's not like super loose. You can't just sit there and mash the button. I mean, you'll get fucked up, but like you can adapt to it pretty quickly, and just learning the different timings for all the different enemies and everything. It feels so good.
Oh yeah. And I was going to say, like, not to jump back to aesthetics, but the penitent one, like when you see him, I don't know. I always thought the character design was a little goofy at first. I mean, he does have this like giant cone head mask. But all of his animations are so badass. Like, and when you come up to an NPC and he like puts the sword away and kind of stands at an angle, like he stands all like hard ass, like when they're talking to him, that, and like all the executions that you can do that are like God of War level brutal.
Oh God, they're so vicious.
Yeah, all of those are like, I mean, rewarding as fuck, especially when it's an enemy that's pissing you off. But so well animated and so like gritty and I would say chunky. Like this game is chunky in a good way.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like making contact with enemies and like about to break down their health bar,
Yeah, it is. And it's so like, it's weird. It toes such a weird line where there is so much just like brutality and blood and gore, but not in a way that feels gratuitous. Like you're doing these like awful, like just ridiculous executions on enemies. So after you can stagger enemies and then you go up and just hit Y or triangle or whatever and do a little execution on them. And it's just this ridiculous violent stuff. Like early on, you fight these guys that have a big, like kind of wooden, like spiked wheel thing, and you just pick it up and literally like crush them into the floor, kind of split them in half with it. But it's not like a Mortal Kombat thing with just this ridiculous like blood sprites flying everywhere. Like there's enough to convey how fucked up all this stuff is, but it's not like, it's weird to say it's not over the top, but it's kind of like not.
And in some cases they kind of jib, like they kind of like blow up. The one I like, there's a candlestick guy and he's got a crown, and when he like he like kind of crushes his head, but when he crushes him, like his crown snaps first. And it's just that little detail of like, it's like chink, and then he like slams it all the way down. You're like, damn, dude. Brutal.
Yeah, it's so good. And even just like the idle animations, like you talked about on the player character, but then on the enemies and everything are so good. It's all this like Catholicism, self-flagellation and everything. Like you'll get these guys with whips that are just sitting there like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit. Fuck me, fuck me, fuck me. Just like whipping themselves in the back repeatedly and everything. And it's just watching like all of the care and attention that's been put into everything is just, it's so like satisfying.
Yeah. And I was going to say two things. I'm going to jump back and forth here. When the parry system is like in full flight, like it's particularly two bosses and you fight them on like an open bridge area. But when you're doing that and it like asks you to parry back, that's when the combat is like at its best.
Yes.
Like, those boss fights are so fucking good. And they're challenging, like they're very like a dance. So you got to like really keep up, especially on the like penultimate boss. But yeah, I really loved those. I meant to
Sekiro. Sorry,
yeah, it does have like a Sekiro flow to it.
I was gonna keep throwing out names
from Soft Games. No, oh, and the other thing is like this game, it's not actually Catholicism. Like it's based off Catholic imagery and like a lot of like Spanish culture. That's where like the pointy hats and a lot of that stuff come from. And sainthood and whatnot. So like it's not one-to-one with like our Christianity, but it is heavily based around like the sin and the dream and death. I wouldn't say it does it in a way that you'd expect. Like especially as like you clear like the first few bosses and like the penitent one has like those visions with the gold face that's like melting.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff is like not really like true to like normal Christian iconography or imagery, but like it's unique in its own way, and it's very cool that they took like their own spin on it, I guess.
Yeah, it feels really fresh, like using, and again, I just don't have that frame of reference that you do, but still it feels like it's pulling from a very unique set of inspirations as opposed to most games of this style, or really just most media. Like it really just all adds into that super kind of distinctive and singular vibe that this has and the aesthetics. And
I felt like story wise, like I was kind of getting like Elden Ring stuff too, with like the trees and self-sacrifice and destroying the body and just like little things that were in the greater context of the game. I thought were kind of interesting. And the setting itself, I mean, it's basically like Spanish Dark Souls land, especially when you see it like the distance and it's like mountains and, you know, open sort of medieval landscapes with like all these ruins and different structures built on.
Yeah. What I was getting from the story is a lot of proper nouns that I did not understand.
there was a miracle, and it sort of follows the Catholic line of thinking that we're like born with sin and we must like repent for our sin, which might be like sins of the flesh to begin with, like just being like a mortal man. And then something like a boy finally made a prayer and became a tree or something. And right. See, like I'm already losing it myself, but there are miracles, and the miracles are like the supposed blessings of like the divine will. It's like greater will is Elden Ring, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
But it's like the divine will or the will of the miracle. And like obviously a lot of the characters and beings in this world are suffering as a result of this miracle, and you are actually the one like putting all of them to rest, like just killing them and shutting down the whole machine. But apparently that's also cyclical, and as suggested by the ending I got, it seemed like the sins are not forgiven and you disappear just for someone else to do it again.
Right. And I will say I've been a little, I guess, flippant about the story and dialogue in the game and everything. I think that this game has like amazing flavor in terms of the moment to moment dialogue, and I can appreciate that it seems like it's obviously very well considered and like conceptually definitely seems to be doing some interesting things. It's written in such a way that it all just sort of becomes noise to me. Like I just barely am able to kind of read through the just words on the screen to what they actually mean, which makes me sound really ignorant and stupid, and I probably am, but like it is so just overly verbose to the point of like almost needless convolution in what's going on, at least to me. And it definitely gives it a cool feeling. Like I really appreciate the vibe it gives the game. It's just like almost impenetrable in the, complexity of how everything is presented.
It, to me, so like going back to church, that's kind of like how it feels in some of the dialogue, that they're saying all these things about the Holy Scripture and like, the basis of religion, that it does kind of like bounce off in that way, but it does, at least to me, it felt true to form. So I was like, yeah, this seems like this is the kind of shit they would say, especially like, and it kind of like wears off a little bit with the final boss, because he's like, aha, you have discovered it was but a mirror of my miracle. Now you will see my true form. Like, I had to hear that dialogue so many fucking times.
Yeah, that final boss was kind of rough too.
Yeah, fucking Mega Man X boss, a stage boss with like a moving sword that flies around the screen, and then a head that you have to attack while it shoots every kind of fucking ability it has at you. And I had just played through, one of the Mega Man X games and then Gravity Circuit. And I was like, God, this shit again, dude. Like, I was hoping for a sword fight again, because that shit was awesome.
Yeah, and there are a couple of those duels that, like you said, are just best in class, like up there with any of the best Souls fights or Sekiro or whatever you want to throw out there.
Well, and yeah, like that's what I mean about the design of that final boss. It felt like when I finally pulled it off, it was luck.
Right.
Because at a certain point, he starts launching attacks where you can get plenty of hits in and like, stay moving, but still like do damage, or you just have to run back and forth across the screen until the fucking attack ends. And that was really grating to me. I think I tried like 20 times before I finally got it. And it was, I'm glad I did it, but I was really not feeling that 2-stage boss. By the end of it, I was tired.
Yeah, it just kind of ends it on a not quite a whimper, not a super sour note, but it's like, okay, good.
Well, and like that second to last boss, I'm guessing they save her for the sequel or whatever. She disappears, like you get into this sort of like finisher with her, and then she like counters it and then vanishes. And I thought she was going to like come back in full form. Maybe I'm missing something here, but
I also haven't looked up the true ending that was added with the last DLC and everything. So I do not know what that is like. So
yeah. Apparently it has something to do with those statues, and I broke the statues every time, and
okay, yeah,
and then a red circle would appear, and then it would be like nothing happened. Same with the candles. I think those are the bloodstained candles, actually.
Oh, okay.
There were little things that I obviously didn't get, and I was like, well, I'm not going back for these, but
yeah, same.
More content is good, though. I'm not going to diminish that,
Yeah, like I feel like I have another playthrough of this in me at some point. It's just it'll be a bit. It's kind of a commitment, even though, like you said, it's not a super long game. It has some amazingly high highs, has some kind of rough, I don't even know that I call them lows, but like it can be a slog at some points too, although it's definitely worth getting through at least once because it is very, very good. Have you looked up anything about the sequel?
I was
Have you seen anything about it?
I was gonna go there actually. Yeah. Yeah, I would say this is a very cool, unique experience, and artistically, it's fucking great.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sequel, I was checking some of that out. It looks cool. The lack of pixel art cutscenes is disappointing, and I don't like the art style they went for as a replacement. But
yeah, so what happened there? The guy so all of the animations for like the cutscenes and everything in the first game were apparently just done by one guy who ended up leaving the studio, and so they just couldn't find someone else that could do that, so they went with a completely different style, and it seems like it lost a lot in getting rid of that actually. Reviews were kind of mixed-ish on it, like generally positive, but it seems like it appeals to a different person. Like it seems like if you didn't really like the first one a whole lot, you may like the second one, but if you did, you may be disappointed in the second one. What I've gotten is that it leans a lot more into a traditional Metroidvania type structure and is a lot like less obtuse and more player friendly, and gives you that regular like power curve where you're getting the new traversal abilities and everything. But in doing so, it seems like it lost a little bit of the spirit of this one and kind of what made it unique. So I don't know. I'm Blasphemous 2 curious, but it just seems like, yeah, I don't really know what to expect from it. My expectations are tempered a little, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at too. But I mean, cutscenes aside, from what I can tell, the visual style of the game is intact. Like it looks just like the first game, at least, you know, from the previews I'm seeing. And yeah, like you get different weapons and different skills. It is that confirmed that you get like different traversal Metroidvania type
Yeah, so yes. So from what I understand, it's kind of a weird system that's tied to the weapons. So like you get new weapons that also double as new traversal abilities. So like you'll have a weapon that gives you an attack that basically lets you do like a double jump or something, and then you have to use that as a double jump to get around the environment too by like switching to that weapon. And it's got some stuff like that sounds like it could be interesting.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed that they didn't stick to the mea culpa as just the main weapon and just add some things to that. But it does look like the weapons they add are pretty cool. So maybe one day I'll give it a shot here.
Yeah, like I said, I will almost certainly get around to it eventually. It just kind of, once reviews started coming out and impressions started coming out of what it was, it kind of turned from like a not necessarily day one, but like I'm gonna jump on this as soon as I can to I'm gonna get this when I get around to it.
Right. I think that's fair too. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. But I mean, yeah, like at least there's more to check out if we get there. And I would say, like, you know, to any listeners or like anyone who's into Castlevania, especially like Symphony of the Night and like that era of games, like definitely play one of these games. Play Blasphemous 1 or 2, either way, because it's pretty sick for what it is.
Yeah. Like I said, some absolutely amazing, like best in class moments and some bosses and just some encounters and art design and everything. Just has some decisions that could be a little grating, I guess, depending on your appetite for that.
Yeah.
Not the friendliest game, but it is a good game. I'm glad I finally got you to check it out so we could ramble about it for a few minutes.
Exactly. So what are we playing next?
What are we playing next? I don't know. I'm blasting through some Case of the Golden Idol.
Yeah, you're gonna investigate some moving pictures.
I'm investigating some like 1920s murders, I think. I don't know when it takes place. Sometime earlier than that, probably. I'm investigating some 1800s murders.
I'm considering a second run of Resident Evil 4 Remake, but I know
need to do that.
You're not quite there yet, but yeah, I'm sure we'll figure out something and meet in the middle here.
We will do so. So, yeah, I think unless you've got anything else, this has probably been a bastard sword.
Yeah, it's a bastard sword. I'd call it.
I'm going to call it. So appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Ratings, reviews, all those things. Leave us angry comments on TikTok. I don't know. Do what you want to do.
Hell yeah. Talk shit. Okay. I'm out.
Awesome. I'm out. Thanks. Bye.